So this morning we are privileged, folks. Casey's out of town. Well, let me reword this. All right, wait. We're privileged. Richard Taylor's going to be preaching for us this morning. Everyone knows Richard. If you don't, make sure that before he leaves, you guys just tackle him and get to know him. He's a great guy. I really love him. We all love him around here. Come on up, Richard. Yeah, give him a warm welcome, please. Richard is kind enough to fill in for us while Casey is out of town. Okay? And we are blessed that Richard is willing to help us and do that for us. So please give him your attention. I know that he's been preparing all week. We got his stuff like Tuesday morning or something. So he's ready to go, and he's like okay with hanky waving and stuff like that. So let's get it on.
Casey was desperate. That's what it was. So you're in charge of making me on? I am on? He said he would be accommodating. Like I said, he was desperate. I said, okay, if you're desperate, I want a pulpit like the old days. So he gets me water. He sits in the chair when he preaches. Does it have this kind of cushion, or is this just for me? It's just for me. And I'm supposed to sit down to do this? Whatever makes me comfortable. After yesterday, it's hard to be comfortable. I want to tell you how much I appreciate this church. My responsibility, they pay me to coordinate the work of a number of churches, getting them to work together to do things. It's called association, Flint Hills Association. And this is one of the stronger churches in our association of about 60 churches, Flint Hills Baptist Association. And I do appreciate this church, Covenant, because once a month on Thursday, we have about 25 ministers here, and we're doing some serious conversations about being effective as pastors. And you all host that. You didn't even know that, did you? I'm very grateful for you guys doing that. You allow your pastor to serve as like the president, the moderator of the association. And yesterday, I don't know how many y'all had, like 15, 20 people from 16 from Covenant that went up to Atchison. And there's a little tiny church. It's a part of our association up there, and we had 175 people from 15 different churches that swarmed that town and just did ministry stuff. And they're like, who are all these people? And we were able to tell them, we come to help and celebrate the church here in Celebration Church in Atchison, and we represent Jesus in Celebration Church. Pretty cool experience. Again, this is one of the strongest churches in our association. We all like to be strong, right? We admire strong people. When I was growing up, it was Mr. T. Atlas? Who? That's right. Do you remember Superman? He was the best. We all admire strong people. They don't crumble in the midst of a crisis. When there's a crisis happening, they're the ones who stay calm. They got everything under control. Any kind of situation, everything's under control. And everyone likes to be around someone who's strong. Right? Is it possible to be a strong person but be a weak person spiritually? Today, I want to tell you a story, example of that. A guy, when I was growing up, we did little flannel graph things in the children's department, and they talk about this being a really strong man, but I think they skimmed over a lot of the details of the story, because it's a pretty hairy story. A lot of stuff you probably don't talk about in children's church is my guess. Physically, this fella, Samson, he was like the Rambo of the Old Testament, okay? But spiritually, he was kind of like Barney Fife, okay? He had no strength when it comes to the spiritual end of things. And what I've discovered is a phenomenon. Anytime you look at and you think about someone who's strong, I mean really strong, if you watch them closely, if you observe those strengths, you'll also recognize there's a weakness there. Okay? Over a period of time you see, and I believe it's true, inevitably great strengths are accompanied by major, what you might call Achilles heel. Okay? There's an issue. Now, Samson's a guy who illustrates that for us, obvious in the Old Testament. But there are celebrities. I'm going to sit down on this thing. Politicians, presidents, same way. They got great strengths, but if you watch over a period of time, you see a flaw in their character. And you think about that, there's some flaw that eventually ends up being the downfall. So here's the question for you guys today. Can we avoid that? Knowing that we all have some kind of Achilles heel, some kind of weakness. How can we avoid that? Can we learn? What I'd like to do is see if we can learn from somebody like Samson. Most of us, how to put this? I'm a grandparent. When I was a parent, we put up a hot wired fence, a strand of wire around our property to keep animals, livestock in. And with young boys, they're always interested. And I say, that's hot. You don't want to touch that. And they would do all kinds of things with this, but they would not touch it. It's like there. I say, don't touch that, that's hot. But you know how they learned that it was hot? We call that learning from the school of hard knocks. We all learn lessons, and sometimes they're hard lessons, but we do remember if they're a hard lesson. I think a wise person will learn from the lessons of somebody else. So today I want us to think in terms of what can we learn about the story of Samson and his life that we can avoid and not touch, that we can learn. It's better to learn from someone else's mistakes than carry them on out ourselves. Samson had the potential to be a superstar. Okay? It says in Judges 13:24, the woman bore a son, and they called his name Samson. And the young man grew, and the Lord blessed him. And right from birth, he's singled out. He's a special child. Samson has everything going from him from the very beginning. I think he had good looks. He had this strength. He had a godly family. God blessed in every area of his life. He had this supernatural strength. He was probably voted the most likely to succeed in high school. Okay? But he blew it. He wasted his life. And by the time we get to the end of the story, you see a broken man. Sad, broken man. It's a sad commentary because he was his own worst enemy. You go, what happened? Man, what happened in his life? And can we learn something about that so we avoid that and that doesn't happen to us? 3 things. If you're going to take notes, John, you already got the notes for them. Make it easier for them to write down. Y'all don't do that, though, do you? Y'all don't take notes? You might want to do that today. I think there's 3 things, 3 characteristics in the life of Samson that'll damage your life. 3 things that'll sap strength out of your life. And I think we need to look at them so we can be stronger people, okay? The first one I'm going to call self-indulgence. Self-indulgence will weaken you. They have commercials on something for food on TV. It talks about indulging. So what exactly does self-indulgent mean? It means a lack of self-control, undisciplined, living an undisciplined life. I'm talking about not being disciplined in your personal life, okay? Anything that's left out of control in your life can weaken you, okay? It can be how you spend your money. It can be sex. It can be food. Could be how you manage your time. Anything that's left out of control for a period of time is going to make a difference. It's going to weaken you. And everybody has them. Everyone has a pet indulgence, okay? And that's the thing we really don't want to give up. Samson's indulgence, he had a weakness for women, okay? There's no doubt about that. He was what you call the playboy of the Bible, okay? He was impulsive. There are 3 chapters in Judges where his story is, and in each chapter he has a different woman. And his life is this pathetic cycle, and he never learns the lesson, and he falls into one trap, and then another trap, and another trap, and I'm not saying that women are traps, okay? But women would tell you that having 3 in 3 chapters is probably not a good thing, okay? They have Bibles? Yeah. It's in chapter 14 of Judges if you wanted to follow along in the story, but I'll read you, if you trust me with it, I can read that to you what it says. His first encounter, it says, Samson went down to Timnah. At Timnah, he saw one of the daughters of the Philistines. Now, Philistines, what that means, they're non-Jewish. They're not of the same religious faith. And it says, he came up and he told his father and his mother, I saw one of the daughters of the Philistines at Timnah. Now go get her for me as my wife. And that's kind of his philosophy. Go get her for me. Okay? His father and mother said to him, is there not a woman among the daughters of your relatives or among our people that you must go to take a wife from these uncircumcised Philistines? And Samson said to his father, get her for me. She's right in my eyes. In Hebrew, it literally means, get her for me because she pleases me. Okay? The best. If you're working with teenagers, the American Standard is the one to use. It says, get her for me, she looks good. Okay? And that's the way Samson lived his life. Self-indulgence. No discipline. All he considered was his pleasure. Okay? She pleases me. It doesn't matter that God had said, don't be marrying an unbeliever. It didn't matter that he had taken his vow that he wouldn't marry an unbeliever. It didn't matter that his parents had warned him not to do this. She pleases me. That's self-indulgent. I got to have her. Now, our typical excuse for self-indulgence, no matter what it is the attitude, just this one time. Just this one time. It couldn't hurt just this one time. Satan's favorite rationalization for us is, it's just a small thing. Fact is, small things can have an enormous impact on your life. Okay? Say, Roger Flanagan. Yeah. He says, I want to take you on a cruise. And he flies us down to Miami, and we get on this big cruise liner. And we get all our stuff stowed away, and we're headed out to sea, probably about a mile out, and he comes knocking on your cabin door and tells you, everything's cool. I mean, really, there's no problem. But we just found out from the captain that there's a leak in the boat. It's a small leak. It's a small leak. Would you be happy with Roger? More than likely, you would want to, if not get a lifeboat, if you're only a mile out, it might be worth the risk of just jumping overboard and start swimming back. It's just one small leak. It's not a very big leak. It's a tiny little thing. We're going to go ahead and proceed on the cruise. As you know, a little leak can sink a big ship. I mean, that's a saying, isn't it? When you have a leak, you have a leak. It doesn't matter what size it is. The only question is timing. When's it going to happen, right? So how do you handle the little things in your life? Samson seemed to ignore them, didn't he? It's just a matter of time. Galatians 6:7 says, do not be deceived. God is not mocked, for whatever one sows, that will he also reap. For the one who sows to his own flesh will from that flesh reap corruption. Okay? Dwayne Dale's in here. So he comes up to me and says, I got a 100-pound sack full of Kentucky bluegrass seed, and it's yours for nothing. You can have it. And you go, okay. Hey, that's good stuff. That's expensive stuff, isn't it, Dwayne? And as he's walking down the driveway, leaving your place, you need to know, there is a little bit of crabgrass seed in there with it. Okay, just a little bit though. It's 97.5% pure Kentucky grass seed with only 2.5 crab seed. You know, eventually crabgrass seed is going to take over the whole thing. Isn't that what happens? That's the way a lot of people take care of things in their life. The point is, it doesn't make any difference what area of your life is out of control, whether it's time, whether it's money, whether it's your attitude, whether it's food. It's inevitably going to sink your life. If you don't take care of it, it's going to weaken you. So, this is the lesson from Samson's life. If you're going to write this down, strong people will discipline their desires. Okay? See how I did the D's? Discipline, desire. They don't just say, it's only a little thing. It doesn't matter. Everything else in my life is under control. It's in order. I'll just got this one little thing. Strong people discipline their desires. Proverbs 25:28 says, a man without self-control is like a city broken into and left without walls. What it says is that the person who has no control in his life, is undisciplined in his life, is defenseless, like a city with its walls broken down around them. So what's the one thing? Self-indulgence will weaken your life, lack of control. The second thing you see in Samson's life is in the next chapter, 15, and we'll use the word bitterness. Bitterness will weaken you. When you look at Samson's life, you see real quick that Samson lived kind of in a constant state of anger. He was mad a lot. He was always upset about something, and he was always reacting violently to the people around him. He had a temper, okay? And his motivation, his primary motivation in life was simply to get revenge. They even got a TV show by that name. I've never watched that. I won't ask about that. The last few verses in chapter 14 talks about the fact that he burned with anger and he went out and he killed 30 men so he could get their clothes. Could have gone to the rescue mission. 30 men for clothes. He knocked off 30 guys. That's kind of a hot temper, right? Chapter 15, you see it several times. So I'll just read you 3 verses that gives you an idea of his attitude, his bitterness. Verse 3 of 15 says, this time I shall be innocent in regard to the Philistines when I do them harm. Verse 7 says, if this is what you do, I swear I will be avenged on you, and after that I'll quit. Then he made the typical excuse of a weak person. Y'all have children? Have you ever heard this one? He answered them, as they did to me, so I have done to them. Well, they did it to me first, right? That was kind of Samson's modus operandi. Use a little Latin there. Modus operandi. He was going to live by his own desires, and he was reacting to other people. When you spend your entire life reacting to the other guys instead of making your own choices, it weakens your life. Okay? It makes you a bitter person. I merely did to them what they did to me. They hurt me first. When you think about it, this resentment, this idea of getting even, It really is a waste. It's a waste of your time. It's a waste of your energy, because the whole time you're mad, you're stewing and you're spewing. The other person, the one who got you upset, he's probably totally oblivious to the whole thing. Have you noticed that? It doesn't bother them one bit. They're not even aware of it. So resentment always hurts you more than it hurts the other person. Self-indulgence weakens your life. Bitterness will weaken your life as well. Lesson 2 out of Samson's life. Strong people control their reactions. Just like they discipline their desires. Use the word are. They restrain their reactions. Restrain their reactions. Now, you may not be able to control what others will do or say, but you can control how you respond to what others do or say. Proverbs 29:22 says, "A man of wrath stirs up strife, and one given to anger causes much transgression." Temper's going to get you in trouble is what it means. Another one says, "Whoever is slow to anger is better than the mighty, and he who rules his spirit than he who takes whole city." So if you're looking at Samson's story, his life, you summarize it this way, really one word, it's uncontrolled. Okay? He was uncontrolled in the sex drive he had. He was uncontrolled in the anger he had, and he couldn't get control of anything in his life. Proverbs 29:11, "A fool gives full vent to his spirit, but a wise man quietly holds it back." He keeps himself under control. Bitterness weakens your life. Anger weakens your life. Self-indulgence weakens your life. Am I supposed to be through by a certain time? Okay. I'm up to number 3, carelessness, okay? Carelessness weakens your life as well. This is the story I remember. When you look at Samson's life, he was a very careless person, okay? He had this super strength, and it was a gift from God. It wasn't of himself, it was from God, but he continually misused it. He continually abused it, okay? He was careless with this gift that God had given him. And his power came as a result of the commitment he had made when he was a young boy. The flannel graphs, I always got the impression it was his hair, but the power came as a commitment. He was a miracle baby in the very first place. An angel had come to Samson's parents who didn't have children. They were like barren, okay? They couldn't have children, and they're going to have a baby boy now. So he had made this vow. Samson had taken this vow called a Nazrite, Nazrite, a Nazrite vow, which included, among other things, that there would be no alcohol in his life. There would be a certain kind of diet. He would never cut his hair. And the never cutting the hair part was to remind Samson that you're different, okay? You're totally dedicated to God. It was like him saying, my life is to be lived completely for God. And as a result, I'm different. I'm no alcohol, this different kind of diet, total dedication to God. So that, for me, from being a child here in this story, is the strength of Samson wasn't in his hair. The strength of Samson was in the commitment he and his family had made, and it was represented in his hair, okay? Saying, God, I'm going to live for you. The problem is that in Samson's life, he totally forgot about his vows, okay? He sold out. He compromised. He gave in, and he broke his vows. And that's probably the biggest mistake in Samson's life, when he refused to take himself seriously and refused to take God seriously. That's really like the major problem, and it will weaken your life. Samson thought everything was a big game, okay? He had a good time with everything he did. He was irresponsible. He toyed with temptation. It's like, how close can I get to this fire without getting burned? How close can I walk to the edge of the cliff without falling off? He was constantly playing life that way. And in that next chapter, 16, we see that in his relationship with this lady named Delilah. Anybody here have a child named Delilah? Nobody uses that. No one ever names their children Delilah anymore. It's a famous story. The barbershop episode is what we called it. As you know, Samson has this weakness for women, and Delilah finds out she's supposed to find out this secret of his strength, okay? And so the Philistine leaders come to Delilah and they say, if you'll find out what makes him so strong, where his strength comes from, we'll pay you like $25,000. Okay, it wasn't dollars, but it was a chunk of money. And she's one treacherous woman, okay? And she takes the money. I'll read it to you. It's chapter 16, verses 4, 5, and 6. After this, he loved a woman in the valley of Sorek, whose name was Delilah. And the lords of the Philistines came up to her and said to her, seduce him and see where his great strength lies, and by what means we may overpower him, that we may bind him to humble him, and we'll give you each 1,000 pieces of silver. So Delilah says to Samson, please tell me where your great strength lies, and how you might be bound, that one could subdue you. Was that my seduction type voice? Okay. So Samson's going to play this game with her. So, okay, you bind me with 7 fresh, the word they use is thongs. It had a different meaning than it does today. That have never been dried, then it'll make me as weak as anybody else. So she puts him into bed and has these men come in, and they bind him with these 7 thongs, okay? And she wakes him up and says, the enemy is all over. And he just busts out of them, and the whole party's over. Well, she comes back second time, okay? You made me look foolish. Tell me what the strength is really. So, well, you got to use new ropes. You didn't use new ropes. You bind me with new ropes, and I'll never be strong again. I'll be as weak as anybody else, he says. So she does that. She puts him back in the bed when he's asleep. They bind him with these new ropes, and he brings in all the men, and they wake him up and say, the enemy's here. And he kills them all, and he's free again. Now, as an adult, I'm thinking through this. Samson, you ought to be catching on here, you know? Wouldn't you figure out if your wife kept asking you the secret for your strength, and every night you end up being woke up and there's not just a strange man, there's strange men. I don't know about that guy. Brawn and brain. He obviously didn't take things seriously. He was really reckless, wasn't he? Careless. Finally, she says, the third time, you've made such a fool of me. You haven't told me the secret of your strength. I can imagine she's turning on the tears, and says, when she pressed him hard with her words day after day, and urged him, says his soul was vexed to death. And he told her all his heart. That was that. Okay? You know how the story ends there. The problem with Samson's life was he compromised once too often. Okay? His lifestyle had been weakening him for years. The haircut episode was just the last straw, really. It wasn't an overnight thing, boom, like that. His entire life, his lifestyle had been robbing him of the very strength that God had given him. And the sad thing is he didn't even know what was happening. I mean, it says that right there. It's a tragic Delilah put Samson to sleep and had the men shave his braids of hair, and they begin to subdue him. And she says, oh, the Philistines are here. And Samson thinks, okay, what else is new? And what it reads is, she says, the Philistines are upon you, Samson. And he awoke from his sleep, says, I'll go out as the other times and shake myself free. But he did not know that the Lord had left him. That's one of the most tragic statements in the whole Bible. He didn't know that the Lord had left him. He was unaware of all that was happening to him, how his lifestyle had gradually but perpetually weakened him little bit by little bit in this gradual process, and he assumed he was still strong. Point is, nobody ever plans to fail. I mean, really. It happens gradually. No one ever says, you know, I think I'm going to be an alcoholic. You know, I think I'm going to be a drug addict. It happens slowly, little by little. You know, nobody ever said, maybe you have heard this, I never intended to ruin my marriage. But it starts with just one little glance, one little encouragement here or there, and on it turns into this big affair. I think I'll destroy my health. But it starts day by day, not taking care of yourself, a little bit at a time. And it builds into a point that some people wake up, they have this rude awakening, and all of a sudden they say, whoa, what happened? God's not here. What happened? You left him back a long time ago because we failed to take God seriously. That's the third lesson that I hope you guys don't learn from the school of hard knocks. Strong people keep their commitments, okay? They protect their commitments. They guard them. They're diligent about them. They're not careless with their commitments. They're serious about their relationship with the Lord. Have you ever heard the statement, a chain is only as strong as its weakest link? Okay? How about this one? Your life is only as strong as your weakest commitment. Your life is only as strong as your weakest commitment. And if you have no commitments, you really don't have much strength anyway. The people who are the strongest are the people who have commitments and are willing to die for them. Okay? So the question to you is, what are you committed to? Okay? That's where your strength will come from. Are you committed to the Lord? Are you committed to your family? You committed to your church? What are you committed to? Okay? Samson was committed to one thing. Himself. Okay? His attitude was, I'll do what I want, and I'll do it when I want. I see it, I'll take it. Feels good, I'll do it. His lifestyle was one of complete selfishness. Okay? Immaturity. He really had no commitments. He was totally undisciplined. And strong people keep their commitments. That's worth writing down. Samson never prayed about anything. I think God was just an afterthought. So, what's the weakest link in your life? What's the one area that's weak? You don't have to write that down. But I do believe your chain is only as strong as your weakest link. Okay? And what are the tragic results of Samson's life? Philistines seized him. They gorged out his eyes. They took him down to Gaza, and they bound him in shackles and had him grinding a mill like you would a horse. Okay? The champion of Israel becomes the clown. He's someone to make fun of. They put his eyes out. He's lost everything. He's lost his power. He's lost any potential he had. He lost his freedom. He's lost his influence. He's lost it all because he wasn't serious about the small things. How is it the guy who has so much potential, the makings of a superstar, a winner, ends up being the tragic loser? Because he was weakened by his own selfishness. He was bitter. And he was very careless. Sad story, right? It isn't the end of the story. You know, they do a commercial and then they come back with the final part here. There is a little hope in his life. You all know that. God never gave up on Samson. Okay? All the time he was just doing his own thing and forgetting about God, living his own lifestyle. God never gave up on him. And God ends up giving him a second chance. That's the little hope. That's my hope. As is usually the case with most people, the hair on Samson's head began to grow again. You notice I said most people. Okay? Remember, the hair that wasn't where his strength was. That's what represented his strength. Okay? His hair represented his commitments. So he's in prison. He's blind, bound. He's being used to do what horses are doing. He's grinding this mill. And he had a lot of time to think, probably. And he has the ability to say, you know, Lord, I have really blown it. I've made a royal mess out of my whole life. And he begins to think, maybe, just maybe, God will give me a second chance. That's the good news. That's the gospel for us, isn't it? That's the gospel. That God gives people a second chance. That's worth writing down. Samson came and he prayed and he repented. He got things right. And he recommitted himself and his life to God, and he was able to start over just like you can. Okay? He began to rebuild the strength in his life. And the greatest victory in the whole story of Samson was on the last day of his life. It says that they took Samson into this pagan temple. They were going to make fun of him there, and they put him between two pillars. You've seen the picture, and he does this, and the whole thing collapses, and all these Philistines are destroyed. Samson has prayed, Lord, just in my last effort, let me avenge my enemies. He began to push and strain, and with every muscle he pushed these two pillars, and the whole thing collapses. Did you know that Samson is mentioned? Have you ever, Hebrews 11 is called, it's a New Testament book, but chapter 11 is called the Hall of Faith, kind of the Hall of Fame for people of faith. It's God's Hall of Fame, faithful people. And you expect to see people like Abraham, or Noah, or Moses. But there's this one guy who makes the Hall of Fame who's an absolute failure his entire life until his last day. Now, to me, that's comforting. It says that no matter how much I've blown my life, how sorry my past looks, God says, you can start over. That's good news, right? That's the gospel, isn't it? On the last day of his life, he did an act of faith that God says is worthy of putting you in chapter 11 of Hebrews, the Hall of Faith. Here along with David and with Joseph with his coat and all these other people. So I don't really care what's in your past. Okay? You may have blown it in all different kinds of ways. Morally, you're still haunted by memories. You may have made a mess financially or maybe physically. Maybe you're addicted to something. You have a broken marriage or 2 or 3. You say, how could God ever use me? God can use Samson. Maybe for you it's a commitment. Maybe for you it's a recommitment. Okay? Okay, let me summarize. What's out of control in your life? Okay? What you make an excuse for, what you rationalize. Every one of us has a weakness. Every one of us has a weakness. What's out of control? It's the little things that are going to sink the boat. Who are you resentful against or about? Who are you really bitter against? For your own sake, you ought to give it up. Okay? Don't be resentful. It's hurting you way more than it's hurting anybody else. And bitterness weakens your life. It drains your strength. Okay? It prevents you from becoming strong for what God wants you to be. And third, what are you committed to? Are you taking God seriously? Or is it just kind of a casual relationship God and I have? Are you serious about it? That's a weakness that will eventually bear bitter fruit in your life. Guarantee you. What are you truly committed to? And if you're one of these guys that say, man, I've messed it up. It is a complete mess. I don't think God could ever use me. I don't think God really loves me. I think that's why he put Samson's name in chapter 11 of Hebrews to God Hall of Fame. He was a royal mess, but at the very end, on the last day, he made it. Okay? If you'd like to make a commitment, say, God, I don't know whether you're going to give me 5 days or 500 days or 50. I want the rest of my life to be the best for my life. I'm going to commit to you lock, stock, what's the word, and barrel. I'm going to be committed follower of you. I'm going to quit playing games with this. I'm going to take this serious. You want to be a strong person? Let me pray. Father, I thank you for the people who are here today and for speaking to their hearts, to our hearts. It's a privilege to feel clean before you, to have a clear conscience. And it's refreshing to let go of the old hurts and the old wounds, to receive fulfillment that comes from just forgiveness. Lord, help us to keep our commitments to you. Help us to be serious about our relationships to you. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.